Dropping out of high school was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, and it shaped my life in unexpected ways. But recently, I was faced with another tough choice: accept a demotion at work or risk losing my job entirely. The trouble began when Sayla, our new sales manager, introduced drastic changes to the department. She announced that only employees with college degrees would be allowed to handle client deals. Those of us without degrees were given menial tasks like making coffee, organizing files, or even cleaning. Anyone who objected faced demotion, or worse, termination. Sela's attitude toward me made it clear she wanted me gone. It seemed personal, like she had a grudge against me. I knew she didn't see any value in keeping me on the team. Still, I understood how important my work was for the company. My departure would leave a significant gap in the team, especially since I was managing a crucial $1,400 million deal with Sun Holdings. Sayla didn't seem to know that I was the one responsible for this high-stakes contract. She was about to find out the hard way. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Archer. I'm 64 years old and work in the sales department at Calix Corporation, a major player in the wholesale industry with annual revenues of $30 billion. My job mainly involves managing contracts with long-term clients. While I'm no longer young enough for fieldwork or cold calling, I oversee ongoing deals from my desk and occasionally attend client meetings when needed. It's a role I take pride in, even if I'm not climbing the corporate ladder anymore. Sayla, on the other hand, is a rising star in the company. She earned her position as sales manager through her impressive academic background. She graduated from NYU with top honors and quickly climbed the ranks. Her promotion happened around the same time I was rehired after retiring briefly. From the moment I returned, I could sense tension. I suspected my rehire after retirement might have caused some resentment, but I never imagined she'd go to such lengths to push me out. One day, Sayla walked up to my desk with a confident smirk. "How's the work going, Archer?" she asked casually. "It's going well," I replied, keeping my tone polite but neutral. She said, narrowing her eyes. "Reading documents must be quite a challenge with your mature eyesight." I knew what she was doing, trying to get under my skin. Her digs about my age and abilities were nothing new. About half the retirees at Calix Corporation get rehired, so my situation wasn't unusual. Still, Sayla liked to remind me that I wasn't as sharp as the younger employees. I stayed calm and answered, "I managed just fine. Thank you." But she wasn't done. "You really should have stayed retired," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You weren't exactly pulling your weight before you left. Is it because you didn't finish high school and need the paycheck? Or are you just here to steal ones?" Her words stung, but I refused to let her see it. I've always known that my lack of a high school diploma made me an easy target in a world that values education so highly. Being a 62-something high school dropout is unusual, and people don't hesitate to remind me of it. It's harder to earn respect when you don't have the credentials to back you up, and Sayla made sure to bring up my education, or lack thereof, at every opportunity. After a moment of silence, she dropped a pile of documents on my desk. "Here's some work for you," she said. "You should be grateful." Grateful? For the extra workload? I sighed quietly as I realized it would mean staying late, but I didn't complain. "Understood," I said simply. Sayla smirked. "That's what I thought. It's good to see you're so obedient. After all, with your background, you don't have much choice, do you? You'll always be following orders from people younger than you. Must be tough." Her words were like daggers, but I refused to let her provoke me. The room felt tense as everyone around us tried to focus on their work, pretending they didn't hear the exchange. This wasn't the first time Sayla had tried to humiliate me, and it wouldn't be the last. A few days later, Sayla called a team meeting to announce a major change in how we worked. Her tone was firm and authoritative as she laid out her plan. "From now on," she said, "only employees with college degrees will handle client deals. Those without degrees will take care of paperwork, make sure the office is clean, and serve tea to the graduates so they can focus on their work." I was stunned. "But I have ongoing deals I'm responsible for," I protested. "I can't just drop them." She cut me off. "Those deals will now be handled by the college graduates," she said coldly. As a high school dropout, you don't need to worry about them anymore. Now, go fetch some tea. Her dismissal was so casual, so cruel, that I barely knew how to respond. I wasn't the only one shocked. Another employee raised a concern. If we suddenly replace the person managing a deal, won't that make our clients lose trust in us? Sayla rolled her eyes. That's exactly why people without degrees are useless, she snapped. Clients don't trust them. They'd rather work with someone educated and qualified. Can't you see that? The employee fell silent, clearly intimidated. Selah's new rules left everyone confused and uneasy. Splitting the team into college graduates and dropouts felt demeaning and unnecessary. Even though she invited us to share our thoughts, it was obvious she didn't really want to hear them. Anyone who spoke up risked becoming her next target. It was clear to me that Selah's real goal wasn't efficiency, it was control. And if pushing me out of the company was part of that, she wasn't going to stop until she got her way. Selah's tone grew colder as she addressed the room. If you can't accept these changes, you'll be transferred to our distribution facility in Nebraska. If that's not suitable, you're free to leave. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what the Nebraska distribution center was like. Tedious work, long hours spent sorting and moving packages, and pay significantly lower than what we earned at the headquarters. For most employees, staying at headquarters, even if it meant performing demeaning tasks like making coffee or cleaning, seemed like the better option. But I couldn't understand how Selah's decision could possibly benefit Calix Corporation. It felt like she was more interested in asserting her authority than improving efficiency. Finally, I spoke up, unable to hold back any longer. If you change the person managing ongoing deals, it will only make our clients lose trust in us. These deals are built on relationships and consistency. Disrupting that could cause serious problems. Selah's glare pierced through me. What's your issue? She snapped. Her harshness caught me off guard, and all I could manage was an awkward smile. Her victorious expression made it clear she was enjoying this. High school dropouts like you have limited options, she said coldly. You're past your prime and don't bring any value to this company anymore. There's no reason to keep you around. Her words stunned me. Sayla had been singling me out for a long time, but this was the first time she had been so blunt about her feelings. It didn't matter to her that I had decades of experience. To her, my age and lack of a diploma made me unworthy of respect, or even a job. I replied calmly, I don't mind working in Nebraska, sorting packages. They often need part-time helpers, so I'm sure they'd appreciate a full-time employee like me. But if a 62-year-old grandfather like me shows up, they might think I'm not the right fit. Sayla chuckled, clearly amused. So, what's your plan then? She asked, leaning forward with a smirk. I thought about my options. It was likely that the CEO and HR department weren't even aware of these changes Sayla was implementing. If they knew, I was certain they wouldn't approve of such unfair treatment. I could report her behavior, but honestly, I was tired of her constant hostility. I had saved enough for retirement, so leaving didn't seem like a bad idea anymore. After a moment, I made my decision. I'll quit, I said simply. Sayla pretended to be disappointed, but I could see through her act. If you wanted to keep working, you should have accepted the transfer to Nebraska, she said with a shrug. The other employees looked shocked. One of them tried to speak up. Wait. Quiet. Sayla interrupted sharply. Lower-level staff should stay out of this. Her dismissive attitude made it clear she wasn't interested in hearing anyone else's opinion. I realized there was no point in arguing further. After being treated so poorly, staying wasn't an option for me anymore. Should I write my resignation letter? I asked. Sayla smiled, clearly pleased. Yes, do that. At least you know how to handle something as simple as that. I quickly wrote my resignation letter, still stunned that my departure was unfolding like this. I had never imagined I would leave Calix Corporation in such a humiliating way. As I handed over the letter, I asked about the handover process for my current deals. There's no need for that, Sayla said dismissively. You only handle paperwork anyway. Her eagerness to see me go was obvious. She even chuckled, as if she had won some personal battle. I thanked her out of politeness and left the office. The other employees looked concerned, but Selah didn't seem to notice or care. She was content, unaware of the chaos she was about to face. The next day, I was at home, finally relaxing after years of stress. But my peace was interrupted by Selah's persistent calls. At first, I ignored them, but her calls didn't stop. Reluctantly, I answered. "Archer, what's going on?" she demanded, skipping any pleasantries. Her tone was frantic, and I could tell things weren't going well at Calix Corporation. She explained the situation. She had successfully created a department where only college graduates managed deals, all without informing the CEO or HR department. For a while, it seemed like her plan was working, and she had been in high spirits. But now, she was panicking. "Please," she begged, "I need you to handle the $1,400 million deal with Sun Holdings. Their annual revenue is over $2 billion, and maintaining this relationship is crucial for the company. If we lose them, it will be a disaster." Her desperation was palpable. The room at headquarters must have been tense as she explained the situation. But then came the crushing blow. One of my former colleagues hesitantly spoke up. "Manager Selah. He resigned yesterday." Selah's face turned pale. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice shaking. "He was in charge of the $1,400 million deal. There's no way an inexperienced person can handle something so significant. You must be lying." But the employees knew the truth, and no amount of denial could change it. One of them tried to reassure her, pointing to another colleague. "He has a UCLA degree. Maybe he can take over the deal." Selah turned to the employee, her eyes wide with hope. "You have a UCLA diploma, right? You can manage this, can't you?" The employee hesitated, looking uncomfortable. After a long pause, he admitted quietly, "I've never handled anything this big before." Selah's confidence crumbled. The $1,400 million deal, a cornerstone of Calix Corporation's success, was in jeopardy, all because she had underestimated the value of experience. And now, she had to face the consequences of her actions. "I think the client will only be satisfied if it's Archer," one of the younger team members reported after speaking with the client. Selah, visibly frustrated, snapped, "Enough. If I say do it, then just do it. If an uneducated dropout like him can manage it, so can you." The young man hesitated, but reluctantly agreed. However, when he contacted the client again, they remained firm. "They wanted me, Archer, back to handle the deal." The young man returned to Selah and said, "I told you, the client specifically asked for Archer." Selah's face turned pale with shock. How could they possibly want someone like him? He's just a high school dropout. What could he possibly contribute, especially at his age? "He doesn't even have the energy to manage sales," she said with disbelief. One of my former colleagues, clearly frustrated by Selah's remarks, decided to speak up. "Aren't you aware of Archer's remarkable career? His resume might look simple, but in the industry, he's highly respected. Many major companies work with us solely because of him." Selah, who had always dismissed me because of my lack of formal education, seemed taken aback. At 24, she was a recent graduate, and she had focused entirely on my lack of credentials, completely ignoring my years of experience and reputation. My colleagues had learned not to bring up my background in her presence, since she clearly disliked me. But this time, one of them couldn't stay silent. "What do you mean?" Selah asked, her voice uncertain for the first time. "If you only look at resumes, you might not know his full story," my colleague explained. "But Archer is extremely well known in the industry. Many of our biggest clients trust him and continue working with us because of him." Realizing it wasn't their place to reveal too much, my colleague stopped and suggested, "You should contact Archer yourself if you want to understand." Selah, who had dismissed and humiliated me just a day earlier, now found herself in a desperate situation. She picked up the phone and called me, her tone laced with frustration. "What's going on here?" she asked, clearly furious. I decided it was time to set the record straight. "It's true that my name is well known in the industry," I began. "I inherited my sales skills from my grandfather, who was a CEO. Thanks to him, many companies have trusted me for decades. Nearly 42 years ago, I managed deals with some of the biggest trading companies in the world. Back then, people even considered me a legendary salesman. Selah's silence on the other end of the line encouraged me to continue. "Let me explain how it all started," I said. "When I was in middle school, my grandfather was the CEO of Archer Corporation, a large company with annual revenues exceeding $2 billion. I admired him deeply and wanted to be part of his world. During school vacations, I would help out at his office, doing simple tasks like making tea and cleaning. They might have been small jobs, but to me, they felt important." I paused, letting her absorb this before continuing. "When I finished middle school, while others were planning to go to high school and later college, I decided I wanted to work at my grandfather's company full-time. It was a bold decision, and many thought I was being reckless. But I was determined. I convinced my parents and grandfather to let me work and study at the same time." I went on to describe my early years at Archer Corporation. "I started with basic tasks like filing papers and organizing documents, but I loved every minute of it. By the time I was 22, I moved into the sales department. It was overwhelming at first, securing contracts wasn't easy, and my approach needed improvement. But I didn't give up. I worked hard and eventually landed my first contract. The feeling of accomplishment was incredible. It made me feel like I was finally a true salesman." As I spoke, I could sense Selah's growing discomfort, but I continued, determined to share my story. By the time I was 27, I had secured a major deal with a large company. That deal was a turning point in my career. I figured out what it took to succeed, and soon, contracts started flowing my way. Word spread in the industry that working with me always resulted in profit. I made it my mission to understand every client's needs and offer solutions tailored specifically to them. It wasn't just about closing deals, it was about building trust and delivering results. Because of this approach, I added, the sales manager started assigning me high-profile deals. Companies began requesting me by name, and I gained respect both within Archer Corporation and in the broader industry. Executives from major firms knew who I was, and my performance earned me praise, and even job offers from rival companies. I explained why I had stayed loyal to Archer Corporation for so long. Despite the offers, I never left my grandfather's company. I loved the work, and I wanted to honor his legacy. Even when he retired at 77 and the company underwent changes, I stayed committed. But as the new management took over, the company started to change. It was no longer the same place I had grown to love. Eventually, I decided it was time to move on. When I left Archer Corporation, I had plenty of options. I could have joined any number of big firms. But instead, I chose Calix Corporation at the age of 38. Since then, I've worked in sales here, contributing to the company in my own way. I even stepped back from prominent roles to let the younger generation shine. I let my words hang in the air, waiting for her response. Selah didn't speak for a moment. She had spent so much time undermining me, focused solely on my lack of a diploma, that she had failed to recognize my experience, my skills, and the relationships I had built over decades. Now, she was beginning to see just how much she had underestimated me. I calmly explained the reality of Calix Corporation's current situation to Selah. Almost all of our major clients are ones I secured over the years. It's no surprise they're refusing to proceed without me. I managed so many deals that I didn't have time for administrative duties, which is why I never held a formal managerial position. But my salary was on par with managers because of the value I brought to the company. Recently, I had started passing my responsibilities on to younger employees, preparing for the next generation to take over. However, being forced to resign so suddenly meant I couldn't complete the handover or even properly say goodbye to my clients. I paused for a moment, then added, "It's no wonder the clients are saying they won't continue their deals." Selah's frustration boiled over. "Why didn't you mention this sooner?" she demanded angrily. "I did ask you if a handover was necessary," I replied calmly. "But if it was so important, you should have made it clear. Instead, you dismissed the idea entirely." Realizing the gravity of the situation, Selah's tone softened. "You need to contact the clients," she said. "Explain the handover process and reassure them to keep doing business with Calix Corporation." but I shook my head. No, I won't do that, I said firmly. Building trust is the foundation of business. If I call the clients now, after resigning, and tell them about internal issues, it will only make them lose faith in the company. They'll terminate their contracts faster than you can imagine. I could see her panic rising as I continued. Calix Corporation has an annual revenue of $6 billion, but $30 billion worth of deals come from the clients I secured. Right now, you've already lost a $1,400 million deal, and at this rate, the company could hit rock bottom. Selah's desperation became obvious. Come back to Calix Corporation, she pleaded. I'll talk to HR and get your resignation reversed. Report to work immediately. I shook my head again. Even if I came back, you'd just treat me like a burden again. I can't work under someone who judges people solely by their resume and educational background. You've made it clear that you see no value in me beyond that. Selah's frustration was palpable, but she couldn't argue. She had realized how much the company relied on the relationships I had built over decades, and now she was terrified of losing those deals. That was the only reason she wanted me back. I decided to be completely honest. Selah, every day I worked under you, I was insulted for being a high school dropout. You constantly pushed me aside and undermined me. Even if I came back and saved the deals, you'd go back to treating me as a burden. I can't work for someone who only values a piece of paper over real-world experience. That's not how trust is built in business. Selah didn't respond immediately. She seemed lost in thought, perhaps reflecting on her mistakes. But I doubted she would change. Her inability to earn trust was her own fault, and it wasn't something I could fix for her. Is that all? I asked. Now that I've retired, I'd like to enjoy some peace and relaxation. Before she could say another word, I hung up the phone and blocked her number. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Later, I heard through colleagues that Calix Corporation's troubles had only worsened. Not only had they lost the $1,400 million deal, but other major deals I had been managing, worth $1,000 million, $2 billion, and more, were falling apart too. Clients were suspicious when I missed scheduled meetings, and after checking with the company, they discovered I had resigned. One by one, clients began terminating their contracts, saying there was no point in continuing without me. Although the company managed to salvage some smaller deals, losing the major ones dealt a significant blow. A week later, I received a call from Calix, the CEO. Unlike Selah, Calix had supported me throughout my 32-year career, so I decided to meet with him. When I arrived at the office, I saw Selah sitting dejectedly in the corner, her usual confidence nowhere to be found. Calix, looking deeply troubled, sighed and said, "We had no idea Selah changed the sales department's operations. The demotion and reassignment decisions were unauthorized. I'm truly sorry for what happened." I smiled slightly and replied, "Please don't worry about it, Calix. You've always treated me with respect. I have no hard feelings." Turning to Selah, Calix ordered, "Apologize to him." Selah, on the verge of tears, said, "I'm very sorry." Her voice wavered as she spoke, clearly shaken by the severe reprimand she must have received. I could see that she regretted her actions, but the damage had already been done. Calix continued, "Our company is in serious trouble. We're losing major contracts rapidly, and if this continues, our business could collapse. We're willing to rescind your resignation if you're willing to come back." I thought for a moment before responding. "I don't mind returning," I said, "but I have one condition." "What is it?" Calix asked, looking concerned. I turned to Selah, whose expression had turned pale. "You're fired," I said bluntly. Selah immediately protested. "Wait, you don't need to go that far. Do you realize how valuable I've been to this company?" I looked her in the eye and said firmly, "Do you realize the damage your actions have caused, not just to me, but to the entire sales department? This is a large company, Selah. If you lose your job here, finding a similar position elsewhere will be extremely difficult. But you brought this on yourself. You judged me and treated me poorly without understanding my contributions." Selah had no response. She looked down, clearly realizing the consequences of her actions. Calix nodded solemnly, acknowledging the fairness of my condition.
Understood, he said.
We'll proceed accordingly. For the first time in a long while, I felt like justice had been served. I graduated from a prestigious university and have always been a top performer, Selah argued, her voice trembling with frustration. How can you fire me based solely on someone else's judgment? Enough, Calix commanded firmly, cutting her off. His tone left no room for argument. But Selah wasn't ready to give up. Wait, Calix, she pleaded. Dismissing me is unfair. I've contributed significantly to this company since I joined as a fresh graduate. Do you truly understand the consequences of this decision? Calix's expression darkened, his patience wearing thin. You made unilateral changes to the sales department, he said sternly, without consulting anyone or considering the impact on employees and clients. That's unacceptable. Selah fell silent, realizing she had no defense. I decided to step in and address her. Selah, I began, my tone calm but resolute. I may be older now, and my physical strength may have diminished, but there's only so much disrespect I can tolerate. Yes, I'm a high school dropout, but that's precisely what allowed me to learn the company's ways early and develop sales expertise faster than anyone else. I paused for a moment, letting my words sink in. You mocked me without ever understanding my circumstances. You saw my lack of a diploma as a weakness, but you never noticed the years of experience and dedication I brought to this company. Selah's hands trembled slightly, her composure cracking under the weight of the truth. Your current job duties are unacceptable, I continued. If I return, I can handle the transition and personally apologize to our clients. But I'll only do this if you step down. Otherwise, I'm content to remain retired. The responsibility for all my work will rest entirely on you. I leaned forward slightly, emphasizing my final point. Honestly, I'm fine with either option. I've saved enough for my retirement and have no obligation to fix the mess you've created. So, what will it be? Calix sat back, considering my proposal carefully. Selah, on the other hand, bit her lip in frustration, realizing the gravity of the situation. With more contracts being cancelled every day, she was overcome with despair. She stood in silence, unable to respond. Finally, Calix nodded.
Very well, he said.
Selah will be terminated. Selah's eyes widened in disbelief. Please wait, she cried. I've contributed so much to this company. Your decision is too hasty. Calix's expression hardened. Your actions have nearly caused a $30 billion loss for this company, he said firmly. Do you understand the consequences of what you've done? Faced with his stern rebuke, Selah shrank back, unable to argue further. Write your resignation letter and leave, Calix said. Don't come back tomorrow. Tearfully, Selah accepted her fate. She sat down at her desk, slowly drafting her resignation letter. With each word, the reality of her situation seemed to weigh heavier on her shoulders. After finishing the letter, she handed it over, gathered her belongings, and left Calix Corporation, never to return. News of Selah's departure spread quickly, and her reputation suffered greatly. Word got around that she had been responsible for the mismanagement that led to my resignation and the loss of major contracts. This made finding a new job incredibly difficult. Even when she managed to secure interviews, her arrogance and inability to take responsibility for her mistakes led to repeated rejections. For 6 months, Selah remained unemployed, humbled by the countless rejections. Eventually, she settled for a part-time position that paid a fraction of her former salary. It was a harsh lesson, but one she could not avoid. As for me, I returned to Calix Corporation and immediately got to work. I began taking charge of the major contracts, personally apologizing to the clients who had grown uneasy during my absence. Employees, who had been deeply worried about the company's future, felt reassured by my return. The news of my comeback spread quickly, and with my sincere apologies, we successfully restored several major contracts. It became clear that Selah had been overly arrogant in her dealings with clients. Her dismissal brought relief not only to the employees but also to the clients, who found it much easier to work with us after her departure. Calix Corporation became more stable and manageable than it had been in years. I now plan to retire at 67, and if the transition continues as smoothly as it has since my return, I'm confident the company will expand even after I'm gone. I want my career to end on a high note. While I may have left my grandfather's company years ago, I feel incredibly grateful to have joined Calix Corporation. With the time I have left, I'm determined to give my all, ensuring the company thrives and leaving behind a legacy of success. This isn't just about work for me. It's about proving that experience, dedication, and relationships can outweigh any piece of paper. As I approach the final chapter of my sales journey, I want to pour my heart into every deal, every conversation, and every decision. My goal is to finish strong, with a lasting impact that will be remembered long after I'm gone.